Cruel tech CEO finds surrogate is a virgin and does the unthinkable instantly. The morning sun bounced off the glass walls of his corner office, casting sharp shadows across the mahogany desk where contracts worth millions lay scattered like playing cards. Logan didn't look up from his phone when his assistant knocked. What happens when the person you try to destroy becomes the only one who can save you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She signed a contract to carry a child for $100,000. But when the billionaire CEO discovered she was a virgin, he made a decision that would haunt him forever. Have you ever been in a situation where someone judged you based on something deeply personal? Have you watched someone use their power to humiliate another person? Do you know what it feels like when someone tries to reduce you to nothing more than a transaction? This is the story of Tiana, a 21-year-old woman who thought she could handle the cold business world of surrogacy, and Logan Pierce. Logan didn't look up where it all began. Logan Pierce's penthouse overlooked Seattle's skyline, but he couldn't see past his own reflection. 24 years old, $3 billion, zero patience or weakness. The morning sun bounced off the glass walls of his corner office, casting sharp shadows across the mahogany desk where contract worth millions lay scattered like playing cards. Logan didn't look up from his phone when his assistant knocked. Surrogacy candidates are here, she announced, her voice careful and measured. Everyone spoke to Logan Pierce that way, like he might explode at any moment. Send them away, he said without lifting his eyes. I changed my mind. Sir, you heard me. I don't want to see their faces. Just pick one from the files. Young, healthy, no complications. Make it happen. His assistant shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Pierce, the agency requires you to meet with. I don't care what they require. Logan's voice could freeze water. I'm not running a charity. This is business. Pure and simple. The truth was, Logan Pierce had never wanted a child. But at 24, he was already feeling the weight of his family's expectations. The Pierce name needed an heir. Board of directors whispered about his bachelor lifestyle. His mother called weekly, dropping hints about grandchildren and legacy. A biological child meant control. No mixed emotions. No relationship drama. Just a contract, a payment, an heir to carry on the Pierce empire. Logan walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle tech district spreading below him like a kingdom he conquered. His reflection stared back, sharp jawline, cold blue eyes, expensive suit that cost more than most people made in a month. He was untouchable, unreachable, exactly how he liked it. The elevator chimed softly in the distance. His assistant's voice drifted through the intercom. Mr. Pierce, she's here. Who? The surrogate candidate, Tiana Williams. She insisted on meeting you personally. Logan's jaw tightened. He didn't do personal. He did contracts, payments, and results. 5 minutes, he said. Then she's gone. The elevator doors opened, and Tiana stepped into his world. Nothing like he expected. What would you do if you had unlimited money, but felt completely empty inside? Share your thoughts below. Tiana's hands shook as she held the surrogacy contract, but not from fear, from determination. 3 days earlier, she'd stood in her mother's tiny Brooklyn apartment, watching the eviction notice flutter to the floor like a death sentence. 21 years old, 2 jobs, and still drowning in bills that multiplied faster than she could pay them. Baby, you don't have to do this, her mother had whispered, her cleaning uniform still damp with sweat from another 12-hour shift scrubbing floors in Manhattan office buildings. But Tiana had already made up her mind. She'd grown up watching her mother clean the very offices that men like Logan Pierce ruled from their glass towers. She'd seen her baby sister's father, a Wall Street trader, promise the world, then vanish the moment responsibility came knocking. Rich men took what they wanted and left destruction in their wake. Tiana had sworn she'd never let one of them break her the way they'd broken her family. But $100,000 could change everything. It could pay for her mother's heart medication, cover the rent for 2 years, and give her sister a chance at college. It could buy them dignity. The surrogacy seemed simple enough. 9 months of carrying someone else's child, then walking away with enough money to escape the cycle of poverty that had trapped 3 generations of women in her family. No emotions, no attachments, just business. Tiana had researched Logan Pierce for weeks. Young, brilliant, ruthless. He'd built his tech empire by the age of 22, crushing competitors without blinking. The media called him the Ice King of Silicon Valley. Perfect. A cold, calculating businessman was exactly what she needed. Someone who wouldn't try to charm her or manipulate her emotions. Someone who would stick to the contract and nothing more. She smoothed her best dress, a simple black number she'd bought for job interviews, and checked her reflection one last time. Her dark skin glowed despite the stress, her natural hair pulled back in a professional bun. She walked into the penthouse, and Logan's first words cut deeper than any knife. "You're not what I ordered," Logan said, and Tiana's world tilted. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd prepared for cold professionalism, clinical discussions, maybe some awkward medical questions. She hadn't prepared for this. Logan didn't even look up from his phone. He stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the massive windows that showcased Seattle's skyline. His posture radiated the kind of casual arrogance that money bought. "Excuse me." Tiana's voice stayed steady, but her hands clenched into fists. The agency was supposed to send someone different. Logan finally turned around, his ice blue eyes scanning her like she was a product he was considering returning. "I specified certain requirements." Tiana felt heat rise in her cheeks. She knew exactly what he meant. She'd heard it before, in job interviews, at college, in stores where security guards followed her around. The kind of coded language that rich white men used when they meant not black. "I meet all the medical requirements," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "I'm healthy, young, and I have a clean background check. What exactly is the problem?" Logan's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth. "There's no problem, just unexpected." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Tiana could feel her dignity bleeding out with every second that passed. This was exactly what she'd feared, being reduced to nothing more than her appearance, her race, her circumstances. But she needed this money. Her mother's medication ran out next week. The eviction notice gave them 5 days. The contract states $100,000 for a successful pregnancy and delivery, Tiana said, pulling herself up to her full height. "I'm here to discuss terms, not to be inspected like livestock." Something flickered in Logan's eyes, surprise, maybe, or respect. Most people didn't challenge him directly. "You're right," he said, walking to his desk and picking up a thick folder. "Let's discuss business." The next hour was a blur of medical terminology, legal clauses, and financial arrangements. Logan spoke about the pregnancy like it was a merger he was negotiating, cold and detached. Tiana matched his tone, refusing to show any emotion that might be used against her. "One more thing," Logan said as they reached the end of the contract. "The agency requires a complete medical examination. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Phoenix. Dr. Martinez will conduct the exam. She's thorough." The doctor's examination reveals something that changes everything: Tiana's virginity. What does it mean to truly see someone beyond their appearance or background? Share your thoughts below. Logan stared at the medical report, and for the first time in years, he felt something crack inside his chest. Dr. Martinez had called him personally, her voice professional but tinged with something he couldn't identify. "Mr. Pierce, I need to discuss Ms. Williams' examination results with you privately." "Just email the report," Logan had said, already moving on to his next meeting. "I think this requires a conversation." Now, sitting in his office at 7 p.m., Logan read the medical report for the third time. The words hadn't changed. "Patient shows no signs of previous sexual activity. Hymen intact." When questioned, patient confirmed this is her first intimate medical examination of this nature. Logan set the report down and rubbed his temples. In his world of calculated risks and strategic moves, this was something he hadn't planned for. Tiana Williams wasn't just young and healthy. She was completely innocent. The realization hit him like a physical weight. This 21-year-old woman, who'd walked into his office with such fierce determination, who'd challenged him with such fire in her eyes, had never been with anyone, and he was asking her to carry his child. Logan had built his empire by compartmentalizing emotions, by treating every situation like a business transaction. But this felt different. This felt wrong. He thought about their meeting yesterday, how she'd stood up to him when he'd made that cruel comment about her appearance. How she'd refused to be intimidated by his wealth or his reputation. How she'd maintained her dignity even when he'd tried to strip it away. For the first time in his life, Logan Pierce felt something he'd never experienced before. Genuine respect for someone he'd initially dismissed. But respect was dangerous. Respect led to attachment, and attachment led to weakness. Logan picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found his lawyer's number. He had a decision to make. He could void the contract now, before things got complicated, before he started seeing Tiana Williams as more than just a means to an end, or he could proceed with the arrangement and try to ignore the growing uncomfortable feeling in his chest. Logan makes a phone call that will destroy everything, but not in the way he expects. When you discover something that changes everything, do you move forward or step back? What would you do? The medical facility felt like a courtroom, and Tiana was both judge and defendant. 2 weeks had passed since Logan's phone call confirming they would proceed with the arrangement. 2 weeks of medical appointments, psychological evaluations, and legal meetings that made Tiana feel like she was signing her soul away. But the money had already started flowing. The first payment, $25,000, had covered her mother's medical bills and bought them 3 months of breathing room. For the first time in years, Tiana had slept through the night without worrying about eviction notices or empty refrigerators. Now, lying on the examination table in the fertility clinic, she wondered if she'd sold her dignity along with her reproductive rights. Dr. Martinez moved around the room with practiced efficiency, preparing equipment that looked more like instruments of torture than medical tools. The procedure itself is relatively simple, she explained, her voice kind but clinical. You'll experience some discomfort, but nothing severe. Tiana nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She'd researched artificial insemination extensively, read medical journals until her eyes burned, watched videos that made her stomach twist. But knowing what was coming didn't make it easier. The door opened and Logan walked in. "What are you doing here?" Tiana's voice came out sharper than she intended. "I have a right to be present," Logan said, but his usual confidence seemed shaken. He looked uncomfortable, almost human. "This is a medical procedure, not a board meeting." "I know what it is." Logan's jaw tightened. I want to make sure everything goes smoothly." Dr. Martinez glanced between them, clearly sensing the tension. "Mr. Pierce, while you're legally entitled to be present, I'd recommend." "He can stay," Tiana interrupted. She didn't know why she said it. Maybe she wanted him to see what his money was buying. Maybe she wanted him to understand that she wasn't just some faceless transaction. The procedure lasted 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. Logan stood in the corner, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his face carefully blank. But Tiana caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. When it was over, Dr. Martinez left them alone to discuss next steps. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. "Are you okay?" Logan asked finally. The question caught Tiana off guard. In all their interactions, he'd never asked about her well-being, never shown any concern for her comfort or feelings. "I'm fine," she said, sitting up slowly. "Just doing my job." "This isn't a job." The words came out harsher than Logan intended. "This is something else." "What is it then?" Logan met her eyes for the first time since the procedure began. "I don't know." 2 weeks later, the pregnancy test shows positive, but Logan's reaction isn't what anyone expected. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to be strong when everything felt wrong? Share your experience. Logan's lawyer called with news that would change the game completely. "Your family knows," Richard Blackwood said, his voice tight with concern. "Someone leaked the surrogacy arrangement to your mother." Logan closed his eyes and leaned back in his desk chair. He'd been expecting this call for weeks, ever since the pregnancy test came back positive. In his world, secrets had a shelf life of about 5 minutes. "What did she say?" "She's flying in from Boston tomorrow. She wants to meet the girl. Her name is Tiana." "Logan, listen to me carefully. Your mother is not happy about this arrangement. She's already contacted 3 different law firms about challenging the contract." Logan's blood ran cold. "On what grounds?" She thinks you're being manipulated. She believes this woman targeted you specifically because of your wealth. The accusation hit Logan like a punch to the gut. He'd spent the last month watching Tiana navigate her pregnancy with quiet grace, never asking for anything beyond what the contract specified. She'd shown up to every appointment on time, followed every medical instruction, and somehow managed to maintain her dignity despite his family's growing interference. "That's not true," Logan said, surprising himself with how quickly he defended her. "Your mother doesn't see it that way. She's hired private investigators to look into Tiana's background. She wants to find something that will void the contract." Logan stood up and walked to his window, Seattle's skyline blurring as his vision filled with rage. "Tell her to back off. Logan, she's your mother. She's trying to protect you. From what? From having a child? From fulfilling the one thing she's been asking me to do for years. For being taken advantage of by someone who doesn't belong in your world." The words hung in the air like poison. Logan had heard them before. From his prep school friends, from business associates, from everyone who moved in his social circle. The unspoken belief that people like Tiana were somehow less deserving, less valuable, less human. "I need to warn her," Logan said. "Warn who?" "Tiana. She deserves to know what's coming." Richard's silence spoke volumes. "Logan, I've been your lawyer for 3 years. I've never seen you this invested in anyone. It's not about investment. It's about doing what's right. Since when do you care about what's right?" Logan didn't have an answer for that. He hung up and immediately called Tiana's number. It went straight to voicemail. By the time he reached her apartment building, it was too late. His mother's black sedan was already parked outside. Logan's ex-fiancée arrives with information that could destroy Tiana's reputation. When outside forces try to control your life, how do you fight back? Tell us about a time you stood up for yourself. Logan's decision to void the contract wasn't about money. It was about fear. The confrontation in Tiana's apartment had been a disaster. His mother, Margaret Pierce, had swept in like a hurricane, her expensive perfume and cutting words filling the small space with toxicity. "You think you're clever," Margaret had said to Tiana, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Getting pregnant by my son and thinking you've hit the jackpot." Logan had watched Tiana's face crumble, watched her dignity get stripped away piece by piece as his mother hurled accusations like weapons. But it was what happened next that changed everything. "I know exactly what you are," Margaret had continued, pulling out a manila folder. "Your mother cleans office buildings. Your sister had a baby at 16. Your family's been on welfare for years. You're nothing but a gold digger who saw an opportunity." Tiana had stood there, 5 months pregnant with his child, and taken every insult without flinching. She'd looked his mother in the eye and said, "You're right about my family, but you're wrong about me." That night, Logan had made the worst decision of his life. He'd called his lawyer and instructed him to void the contract, not because he believed his mother's accusations, but because he was terrified of what he was feeling. Every time he looked at Tiana, every time he saw her strength and grace, something inside him cracked a little more. He was falling for her, and that was unacceptable. So he did what he always did when emotions threatened his control. He destroyed the source. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Tech billionaire voids surrogacy contract, cites fraud concerns. The story ran in every major newspaper, every tech blog, every gossip site. Logan's PR team had crafted the narrative carefully. They painted Tiana as a manipulative opportunist who'd hidden crucial information about her background. They suggested she deliberately targeted Logan because of his wealth and naivety. They destroyed her reputation in less than 24 hours. Logan watched the coverage from his office, his stomach churning with every headline. His phone buzzed constantly with congratulations from business associates who praised him for dodging a bullet. But when he tried to call Tiana, her number was disconnected. When he sent his assistant to check on her, the apartment was empty. "She's gone," his assistant reported. Neighbors said she left yesterday with just a suitcase. Logan stared out at the Seattle skyline, the city lights blurring through his tears. He'd gotten what he wanted, his life back, his reputation intact, his emotions safely locked away. But for the first time in his life, winning felt like losing. The media coverage continued for weeks. Tiana's name became synonymous with fraud and manipulation. Her face appeared on news shows as an example of how far some people would go to exploit the wealthy. Logan never corrected the narrative. He never admitted the truth. He let the world believe she was a villain. Tiana disappears completely, and Logan can't find her anywhere. What happens when someone you trusted breaks that trust completely? How do you rebuild? For the first time in his life, Logan Pierce couldn't buy his way out of a problem. 3 months had passed since Tiana disappeared, and Logan had used every resource at his disposal to find her. Private investigators, security firms, even government contacts, all of them came back empty-handed. It was like she never existed. She's smart, his head of security reported during their weekly meeting. She's not using credit cards, not accessing social media, not even using her real name. Whoever helped her disappear knew what they were doing. Logan's business empire was suffering from his distraction. He'd missed 3 major board meetings, ignored crucial merger negotiations, and let million-dollar deals slip through his fingers while obsessing over finding one pregnant woman. His mother called it a blessing. "You're finally coming to your senses," she said during one of their stilted phone conversations. That woman was poison, but Logan knew better. He'd seen the medical reports. He'd witnessed Tiana's strength firsthand. He'd watched her handle his family's cruelty with more grace than he'd ever shown anyone. She wasn't poison. She was everything he'd never known he needed. The worst part was the pregnancy. Somewhere out there, Tiana was carrying his child without proper medical care, without the support she deserved, without the resources the contract had promised her. Logan's sleep became filled with nightmares. Visions of Tiana alone in some rundown motel, struggling with complications he could have prevented. He'd wake up in cold sweats, reaching for his phone to call doctors he'd never meet, to pay for care he couldn't provide. His assistant found him one morning passed out at his desk, surrounded by empty coffee cups and printed emails from every private investigator in the Pacific Northwest. "Sir, you need to stop this," she said gently. "You're destroying yourself." "I destroyed her first," Logan replied, his voice hollow with exhaustion. "Maybe it's time to let her go." Logan looked up at his assistant. A woman who'd worked for him for 3 years, who'd seen him at his worst, and still showed up every day. "Would you forgive me if I'd done to you what I did to her?" She considered the question carefully. "I don't know, but I know you'll never forgive yourself if you don't try to make it right." Logan receives a call from a hospital. Tiana is in critical condition. Have you ever realized too late that you hurt someone who didn't deserve it? Share your thoughts on making amends. Logan stood outside the hospital room, afraid to face the consequences of his cruelty. The call had come at 3 a.m. A nurse at Seattle General, her voice professionally calm, but tinged with urgency. "Mr. Pierce, we have a patient here who had your contact information in her emergency paperwork. Tiana Williams. She's been admitted with pregnancy complications." Logan had broken every speed limit getting to the hospital. He'd abandoned his car in the emergency parking lot and sprinted through the sliding doors like a man possessed. Now, staring at the door to room 314, he couldn't move. "Are you family?" A doctor appeared beside him, clipboard in hand, exhaustion etched into her features. I'm the father," Logan said, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Dr. Sarah Chin nodded and gestured for him to follow her to a quiet corner of the hallway. "She's stable now, but it was touch and go for a while. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and extremely high blood pressure. She's been living without proper prenatal care for months." Logan's legs nearly gave out. "The baby? Strong heartbeat, but we need to monitor closely. Another few hours, and we might have lost them both." The words hit Logan like physical blows. While he'd been sitting in his glass tower, drowning in guilt and self-pity, Tiana had been dying. His child had been dying. "Can I see her?" Dr. Chin studied his face carefully. "She's been awake for the past hour. She asked specifically that no one be allowed in except medical staff." "Please," Logan's voice cracked. "I need to tell her I'm sorry. Mr. Pierce, I don't know what happened between you two, but that young woman has been through hell. She's been living in a women's shelter for the past month. working 2 jobs to pay for basic medical care. Whatever you did to her, it nearly killed her. Logan closed his eyes, the weight of his actions crushing down on him. I ruined her life. Then maybe it's time to help her rebuild it. Dr. Chen opened the door to room 314 and stepped aside. Logan walked in slowly, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Tiana lay in a hospital bed, connected to monitors that beeped softly in a quiet room. She looked so small, so fragile, nothing like the fierce woman who'd challenged him in his office months ago. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. When she heard his footsteps, she turned her head slowly. "You came," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been looking for you everywhere." "I know." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I saw the news reports. I saw what you let them say about me." Logan moved closer to the bed, his hands shaking. "Tiana, your baby is okay," she interrupted, her hand moving to her swollen belly. "That's all you wanted to know, right? Your heir is safe." "No," Logan said, his voice breaking. "That's not all I wanted to know." Tiana wakes up and delivers words that shatter Logan's world. "When you see someone at their most vulnerable, what does it teach you about strength? Tell us about a moment that changed your perspective." "I never needed your money," Tiana whispered, and Logan's entire worldview crumbled. The words hung in the sterile hospital air like a bomb waiting to explode. Logan stared at her, confused, his mind struggling to process what she'd just said. "What do you mean?" Tiana shifted in the hospital bed, her hand still protective over her belly. "I mean exactly what I said. I never needed your money, Logan. I never needed your contract. But your mother's medical bills, the eviction notice, your sister's college, all taken care of. 3 months before I ever walked into your office." Tiana's voice was steady now, stronger. "I got a full scholarship to law school. Columbia. I deferred enrollment to have your baby." Logan felt the room spin around him. "That's impossible. You said you were desperate. You said you needed the money to escape poverty. I said I grew up watching my mother clean offices. I said I'd seen rich men abandon their responsibilities. I never said I was poor." Tiana's eyes met his, and he saw a strength there that he'd somehow missed before. "I have a master's degree in business administration. I graduated summa cum laude. I could have gotten a job at any tech company in Seattle. Then why?" Logan's voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you agree to carry my child?" "Because I wanted to understand what kind of man you really were. My thesis was on corporate social responsibility and ethical leadership. I've been studying your company for months, trying to figure out how someone so young could be so successful and so empty." The truth hit Logan like a physical blow. "You were studying me. I was studying you," Tiana confirmed. "But somewhere along the way, I started caring about you. I saw glimpses of the person you could be, buried under all that armor you wear." Logan sank into the chair beside her bed, his head in his hands. "You mean I destroyed an innocent woman's life because I was too proud to admit I was falling for her? You destroyed my reputation because you were afraid of your own feelings," Tiana said quietly. "There's a difference. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you defend yourself when the news broke?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd do the right thing on your own. I wanted to see if the man I thought I was falling for actually existed." Logan looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. "And what did you find out?" "That he does exist, but he's buried so deep under fear and conditioning that he might never find his way out." Logan makes a public announcement that shocks the entire tech world. When you discover you've been completely wrong about someone, how do you make it right? Share your thoughts. Naomi sat in her apartment, staring at the photograph until her eyes burned. Her father, young and hopeful, standing next to a man she now recognized as Robert Blackwood. The timestamp read 1987, the year her father died. She called her mother in Michigan. "Mom, I need to ask you something about Dad's accident." Her mother's voice went quiet. "Naomi, why are you bringing this up now?" "I found something. A photo. Dad worked for Blackwood Industries, didn't he?" The silence stretched so long, Naomi thought the call dropped. Then her mother spoke, and her voice was different. Older, sadder. "Your father was going to testify against Robert Blackwood about the chemical spill that killed 3 workers. He had evidence. Documents. Photos of the safety violations. Naomi's hand shook. What happened to him? The brake lines on his truck were cut. The police said it was vandalism, but your father knew better. He was scared, Naomi said. Powerful people wanted him quiet. 2 days later, he was dead. The room felt like it was spinning. Naomi gripped the edge of her kitchen table. The settlement money you got after he died. Guilt money. Robert Blackwood personally delivered that check. Said he was sorry for our loss, but it came with conditions. We had to sign papers saying we'd never talk about what your father knew. Naomi closed her eyes. All these years, she thought her father died in a random accident. But it wasn't random. It was murder, and Robert Blackwood had covered it up. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? Because I was scared, and because I thought if I never talked about it, you'd be safe. But now you're mixed up with his son, and I'm terrified history is going to repeat itself. After hanging up, Naomi sat in the dark for hours. Everything made sense now. Why she'd always felt drawn to justice. Why she'd studied law before switching to business. Why she never trusted powerful men who smiled too much. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. The paternity test results are in. We need to talk. Naomi's heart stopped. In all the chaos, she'd forgotten about the court-ordered DNA test. She called Marcus immediately. The baby is definitely Asher's, Marcus said without preamble. But here's the interesting part. The lab also ran extended family markers as part of their standard process. Naomi, you and Asher share genetic markers. What does that mean? It means somewhere in your family trees, there's a connection, probably a few generations back. It's distant, but it's there. Naomi felt sick. Are you saying we're related? Distantly, like fourth or fifth cousins. But here's what's really strange. I ran a background check on both your families. Your great-grandfather and Asher's great-grandfather were business partners in the early 1900s. They founded what eventually became Blackwood Industries together. The pieces were falling into place. What happened to my great-grandfather? He died under suspicious circumstances in 1923. The police report says he fell from a building, but witnesses said he was pushed. After his death, the Blackwood family took over the entire company. Your family got nothing. Naomi felt the weight of generations pressing down on her. This wasn't just about her and Asher. This was about two families whose paths had been intertwined for over a century. And every time they crossed, someone from her family ended up dead. She thought about her father's words, the ones her mother had shared. Powerful people wanted him quiet. Now she understood. The Blackwood family had been silencing her family for generations. But this time was different. This time, she had something they wanted, something they needed, the baby. According to the will Marcus had uncovered, Asher needed to be married with a child by his 26th birthday to inherit the full fortune. He was 25 now. The baby she carried wasn't just their child. It was the key to everything his family had built on her family's blood. Naomi made a decision that would change everything. Instead of hiding, she was going to fight. But not the way Asher expected. She was going to use the one weapon he couldn't fight, the truth. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for Channel 7 News. I'd like to speak to someone about a story. A story about murder, cover-ups, and a family that's been getting away with it for over 100 years. Tomorrow, everyone would know what the Blackwood family had done. And for the first time in 4 generations, her family was going to win. Have you ever discovered something that changed everything you thought you knew about your life? Keep watching because what happens next will shock you. And Asher has no idea what's coming. The story hit the morning news like a bomb. Naomi sat in Marcus's office, watching Channel 7 broadcast her interview from the night before. The reporter had done her homework. The screen showed old photos of her great-grandfather and Asher's great-grandfather shaking hands at a groundbreaking ceremony in 1922. Then came the police report from 1923. The suspicious death ruled an accident. Good morning, Atlanta. We're following a developing story about Blackwood Industries and allegations of a century-old cover-up. Naomi Williams, the woman at the center of the recent paternity lawsuit, claims her family has been systematically silenced by the Blackwood family for over 100 years. The interview footage rolled. Naomi looked calm, professional, and completely believable. My great-grandfather helped build this company. When he died under suspicious circumstances, the Blackwood family took everything. When my father tried to expose safety violations that killed 3 workers, his truck's brake lines were cut. The pattern is clear. Marcus turned down the volume. Your phone's been ringing nonstop. CNN wants an interview. The Wall Street Journal is asking questions. And Asher's legal team has been calling every 10 minutes. What are they saying? They want to settle. Immediately. Full withdrawal of the lawsuit, public apology, and a financial settlement that would set you up for life. Naomi shook her head. They're scared. Good. What about the inheritance angle? That's where it gets interesting. I've been digging deeper into Robert Blackwood's will. The marriage and child requirement isn't just about continuing the family name. It's about legal protection. If Asher doesn't meet the conditions, the entire fortune goes into a trust managed by the board of directors. But here's the twist. If the inheritance is contested on grounds of criminal activity, the whole thing could be seized by the state. Naomi leaned forward. Criminal activity? Murder. Cover-ups. If we can prove the Blackwood fortune was built on crimes, including your great-grandfather's death and your father's murder, the entire inheritance becomes vulnerable. The state could seize everything under criminal forfeiture laws. The implications hit her like lightning. So if I can prove they kill my father, the whole empire crumbles. Billions of dollars. Gone. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me in my office. Ugh. She showed Marcus the message. He frowned. I don't like it. Could be a trap. Or it could be him finally ready to face the truth. Either way, I'm going. But I want you to know where I am every minute. An hour later, Naomi stood in the elevator heading to the 40th floor of Blackwood Tower. She'd been here before for meetings, but this felt different. The security guards looked nervous. The receptionist wouldn't make eye contact. Asher's office door was open. He sat behind his desk, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked small, vulnerable, human. Close the door, he said without looking up. She did, but remained standing. You wanted to talk? I watched your interview this morning. All of it. Then I called my lawyers and told them to stop calling you. He finally looked at her. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept. I also called the board and told them to drop the lawsuit. Why? Because I found something. After your interview, I went to my father's private office, the one he kept locked even from me. I found files, Naomi. Files about your father, about the chemical spill, about the brake lines. He opened a manila folder and pushed it across the desk. My father kept records of everything, including the payments he made to have your father killed. Naomi's hands shook as she opened the folder. Bank records, phone transcripts, a contract with a man named Vincent Torres, described as a problem solver. Payment, $50,000 for permanent silence. Jesus Christ, she whispered. There's more. Records going back to your great-grandfather. My great-grandfather had him pushed off that building. The Blackwood family has been murdering your family for over a century. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Naomi stared at the documents, feeling the weight of 4 generations of pain. Why are you showing me this? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because you're carrying my child, and I want that child to grow up in a world where the truth matters. Because, he paused, his voice breaking. Because I think I'm falling in love with you, and I can't build a life on my family's lies. The confession hung in the air between them. Naomi felt tears she didn't know she was holding back start to fall. Your inheritance. I don't want it. I don't want any of it. I want to give it all back. To your family. To the families of the workers who died. To everyone my family has hurt. You can't just give away billions of dollars. Watch me. He stood up, walked to his window overlooking downtown Atlanta. I called a press conference for this afternoon. I'm going to tell everyone what my family did. All of it. And I'm going to announce that I'm turning over all the evidence to the FBI. Naomi stared at him. You'll destroy everything your family built. My family built this empire on blood and lies. It's time to tear it down. For the first time in months, Naomi felt something she hadn't expected to feel about Asher Blackwood. Respect. Can you imagine finding out your entire family fortune was built on murder? Keep watching because what happens next will change everything for both of them. The press conference was scheduled for 3 p.m. By 2:30, Blackwood Tower was surrounded by news vans. Naomi stood in the conference room, watching the crowd of reporters through the window. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since word leaked about Asher's announcement. "You sure about this?" Marcus asked, standing beside her. "I'm sure. For the first time in months, I'm completely sure." The door opened, and Asher walked in, followed by his assistant and 2 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The board members, Patricia Morse and David Chun, had been trying to talk him out of this for hours. "Mr. Blackwood," Patricia said, her voice tight with frustration, "you don't understand what you're doing. This will destroy thousands of jobs, retirement funds, college savings. You're not just destroying your family's legacy, you're destroying innocent people's lives." Asher straightened his tie. "Those people deserve to know the truth about who they've been working for." "The truth?" David Chun stepped forward. "The truth is that your father built this company into something that employs over 50,000 people, that supports communities across 3 states. You want to burn it all down because of something that happened before you were born. Something that happened before I was born, and something that happened 20 years ago when my father murdered her father." Asher pointed to Naomi. "And something that continued when I sued an innocent woman because I was too cowardly to face what we've done." The room fell silent. Patricia and David exchanged glances. "We can't let you do this," Patricia said quietly. "You can't stop me. I own 51% of this company." "Actually," David said, pulling out a folder, "we can. We've been in contact with the family lawyers. There's a provision in your father's will that allows the board to assume control if the heir is deemed mentally incompetent or acting against the company's interests." Asher's face went pale. "You're having me declared incompetent? We have 3 psychiatrists who will testify that your recent behavior shows signs of a mental breakdown. The pregnancy scandal, the public outbursts, now this. It's enough to convince a judge." Naomi felt anger building in her chest. "You're trying to silence him the same way you silenced my father." Patricia turned to her. "Ms. Williams, you seem like a smart woman. You know what happens if this company collapses. The economy of 3 states gets hit. Pension funds lose billions. And you'll be the woman who destroyed 50,000 jobs because she couldn't get over something that happened before she was born." "Before I was born?" Naomi's voice rose. "My father was murdered 20 years ago. I was 12 years old. I watched my mother cry every night for a year because she thought she'd never be able to pay the bills. That's not before I was born. That's my childhood. And we're sorry for that," David said. "But destroying the company won't bring your father back." "No, but it might prevent you from murdering someone else's father." The room erupted in arguments. Patricia and David both talking at once, trying to convince Asher to back down. Asher standing firm, his jaw set with determination. And Naomi, watching it all, realized something important. She was tired of being a victim. "Stop," she said, but her voice was too quiet. "Stop," she shouted. Everyone turned to her. "I have something to say." She walked to the center of the room. "For months, you've all been talking about me like I'm not here, making decisions about my life, my baby, my future. But I'm done being a victim in this story." She looked directly at Patricia and David. "You want to know what I want? I want justice. Not just for my father, but for every family your company has destroyed. I want the truth to come out. But I also want to make sure that 50,000 innocent people don't lose their jobs because of your family's crimes." She turned to Asher. "And I want this company to survive, but not as a monument to murder, as something better. What are you suggesting?" Asher asked. "I'm suggesting we restructure everything. Turn Blackwood Industries into an employee-owned cooperative. Give the workers a real stake in the company. Set up a fund for the families of everyone who was killed or hurt by your family's actions. And yes, tell the truth about what happened, but do it in a way that builds something better instead of just tearing everything down." The room was quiet. Patricia and David looked shocked. Asher looked thoughtful. "That's actually not crazy," he said slowly. "Employee ownership would protect the jobs. The fund would provide justice for the families. And the truth would finally come out. It would also mean giving up control, David pointed out. Good, Asher said. My family has proven we can't be trusted with control. Patricia shook her head. The board will never approve this. The board doesn't have a choice, Naomi said, because I'm about to walk into that press conference and tell the world about the evidence we found, about your attempt to have Asher declared incompetent, about the pattern of cover-ups that goes back over a century. You can either be part of the solution or you can be part of the problem. She looked at her phone. It's 2:55. In 5 minutes, the whole world is going to know what the Blackwood family has done. The question is whether you want to be remembered as the board that tried to cover it up or the board that helped make it right. Patricia and David looked at each other. After a long moment, Patricia sighed. What exactly are you proposing? Naomi smiled. For the first time in months, she felt like she was winning. I'm proposing we change everything, starting right now. Have you ever had to choose between easy and right? Keep watching because what they decide next will shock the entire business world. The press conference was unlike anything Atlanta had ever seen. Naomi stood at the podium, flanked by Asher on one side and Marcus on the other. The room packed with reporters, cameras, and flash photography. Behind them, a screen displayed the documents they'd found. Bank records, contracts, evidence of a century of crimes. Ladies and gentlemen, Naomi began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. My name is Naomi Williams. 4 months ago, I was just another employee at Blackwood Industries. Today, I'm here to tell you about a pattern of murder, cover-ups, and corporate corruption that spans over 100 years. She clicked to the first slide. A photo of her great-grandfather and Asher's great-grandfather at the 1922 groundbreaking ceremony. In 1923, my great-grandfather was murdered by the Blackwood family so they could steal his share of what would become a billion-dollar empire. In 1987, my father was murdered because he tried to expose safety violations that killed 3 workers. Today, we're here to make sure no one else dies for the Blackwood family's profits. The room erupted in questions, cameras flashing, reporters shouting. Naomi held up her hand for silence. I know what you're thinking. Why would the heir to a billion-dollar fortune help expose his own family's crimes? The answer is simple. She gestured to Asher. Because some things are more important than money. Asher stepped forward. My name is Asher Blackwood. I'm 25 years old, and I've spent my entire life benefiting from money that was stolen from families like Naomi's. Today, that ends. He clicked to the next slide. The restructuring plan they developed. Effective immediately, I'm announcing the transformation of Blackwood Industries into the largest employee-owned cooperative in the United States. Every worker will become a shareholder. Every family that was hurt by my family's actions will receive compensation from a fund I'm establishing with my personal inheritance. The room exploded again. Reporters were calling out questions, typing furiously on laptops, speaking rapidly into phones. This wasn't just a confession. It was a complete restructuring of American corporate culture. What about the board of directors? A reporter from the Wall Street Journal shouted. Patricia Morse stepped forward. The board supports this transition. We believe employee ownership is the future of American business. She'd agreed to the plan after seeing the mountain of evidence Naomi and Asher had compiled. The alternative, criminal charges, federal investigation, complete corporate collapse, was far worse than losing control to the workers. What about the criminal charges? Another reporter asked. This time, Marcus answered. The FBI is already investigating. We've turned over all evidence to federal prosecutors. While we can't prosecute the dead, we can make sure the living face consequences for their actions. A reporter from CNN raised her hand. Ms. Williams, you're pregnant with Mr. Blackwood's child. How does this affect your relationship? Naomi and Asher exchanged glances. They discussed this question, but hadn't fully decided how to answer it. Our relationship is complicated, Naomi said carefully. But our child will grow up in a world where the truth matters more than money. That's what we both want. After the press conference, they retreated to a private conference room. The initial reaction was overwhelming. Social media was exploding with hashtags like #BlackwoodTruth and #EmployeeOwnership. Stock prices were fluctuating wildly. Politicians were calling for investigations. Think we did the right thing? Asher asked, loosening his tie. I think we did the only thing, Naomi replied. The question is what happens now? Marcus looked up from his laptop. The FBI wants to interview both of you tomorrow. The IRS is opening an investigation into the corporate restructuring. And apparently, 3 other companies are announcing similar employee ownership transitions. Really? You two might have just started a revolution. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from her mother saw the news. Your father would be proud. I love you. She showed the message to Asher. He smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in months. What about us? She asked quietly. What about us? Are we going to try to make this work? The relationship, I mean, not just the business stuff. Asher was quiet for a long moment. I'd like to try, but I understand if you can't forgive what my family did to yours. Your family did terrible things, but you didn't do them, and you're the one who chose to make it right. She paused. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt, but I'm also grateful, and maybe that's enough to start with. What about the baby? The baby deserves to know both parents and to grow up in a world where justice is possible. 6 months later, Naomi sat in her new office, not as an employee, but as the elected president of the Blackwood Workers Cooperative. The transition had been rocky, but it was working. Productivity was up. Worker satisfaction was at an all-time high, and the company was more profitable than ever. Her phone rang. Naomi Williams. Ms. Williams, this is Sarah Martinez from the Department of Justice. I want to let you know that the investigation into Blackwood Industries is complete. We're filing criminal charges against 12 individuals, including 3 former board members and the man who killed your father. He's been arrested. Naomi felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Your courage changed everything. After hanging up, Naomi looked at the photo on her desk. Her father, young and hopeful, standing in front of a construction site. Next to it, a newer photo, her and Asher at the hospital holding their newborn daughter. They named her Hope, because sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. Have you ever wondered what would happen if people chose justice over profit? Keep watching because this story proves that even the biggest lies can't survive the truth. 1 year after the press conference, Naomi stood in the nursery of her new home, holding Hope against her chest. The baby was 6 months old now, with Asher's dark hair and Naomi's stubborn chin. Outside the window, she could see the Blackwood Workers Cooperative building in the distance, its sign now reading Hope Industries, named after the baby who had changed everything. She's beautiful, Asher said from the doorway. He'd been staying over more often lately, and they'd been talking about making it official. Not marriage, not yet, but a real relationship, a real family. She's perfect, Naomi agreed, and she's going to grow up in a world where her last name means something good. The transformation had been remarkable. The Workers' Cooperative was thriving. The compensation fund had paid out over $200 million to families affected by Blackwood Industries crimes. Vincent Torres, the man who'd killed her father, was serving life in prison. 3 former board members were awaiting trial. But the real victory was personal. I got a call from my mother today, Asher said, sitting in a rocking chair. She's been in rehab for 8 months now. She wants to meet Hope. Naomi looked at him carefully. Asher's relationship with his family had been complicated since the revelations. His mother had struggled with addiction for years, partly due to the guilt of knowing what her husband had done. His sister had cut off contact completely, angry that he destroyed the family legacy. How do you feel about that? I think I want Hope to know her grandmother. The real one, not the one who was hiding behind pills and alcohol. It was a sign of how much he'd changed. The old Asher would have made that decision alone. This Asher asked for her opinion on everything involving their daughter. I think that's a good idea, but we take it slow. Agreed. He paused. There's something else. I've been thinking about the future. About us. Naomi's heart started beating faster. What about us? I know we said we'd take things slow, and I know I have a lot to prove after everything that happened. But Naomi, I love you. I love our daughter, and I want to build a life with you. She set Hope in her crib and turned to face him. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to marry you. Not because of the inheritance that's gone anyway. Not because of the baby. though I love her more than life itself. But because you're the strongest, most amazing woman I've ever known, and I can't imagine my life without you." He pulled out a small velvet box. "I know this is crazy. I know we've only been really together for a few months. But I also know that life is short and uncertain. And when you find something real, you don't let it go." Naomi stared at the ring. It was simple, elegant, beautiful. Nothing like the flashy displays of wealth she'd expected from the Blackwood family. "Asher, I know it's fast. I know I hurt you. I know my family destroyed your family. But I also know that we've built something beautiful together. Something honest. Something that could last." She thought about everything they'd been through. The lawsuit, the media circus, the revelations about their families. But she also thought about the way he'd stood up to his own board of directors. The way he'd given up billions of dollars to do what was right. The way he looked at their daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Ask me again in a year," she said finally. His face fell. "Naomi, not because I don't love you, because I do, but because I want to be sure. I want to be sure that the man I'm marrying is the man you've become, not the man you were. I want to be sure that we're building something real, not just reacting to trauma." He nodded slowly. "I can respect that. But can I ask you something?" "What? Do you think we have a chance?" "Really?" Naomi looked at their daughter, sleeping peacefully in her crib. She thought about the company they'd built together, the justice they'd achieved, the future they were creating. "I think we have something better than a chance. I think we have hope." The next morning, Naomi stood in front of the Hope Industries building, preparing for the anniversary press conference. In 1 year, they transformed a corrupt corporation into a model of employee ownership. Other companies were following their example. Business schools were teaching case studies about the Blackwood transformation. But more importantly, they'd proven that justice was possible, that powerful people could be held accountable, that the truth, no matter how buried, could eventually surface. "Ready?" Asher asked, appearing beside her. "Ready." They walked into the building together, past the memorial wall they'd installed for the workers who died due to safety violations, past the employee profit-sharing announcements, past the photos of the families who'd received compensation from a justice fund. In the conference room, reporters were already gathering. The story wasn't as sensational as it had been a year ago, but it was still important. They were announcing a new initiative, the Hope Foundation, dedicated to helping whistleblowers and supporting families of workers killed by corporate negligence. "One more question," a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution called out. "Ms. Williams, do you ever regret getting involved with the Blackwood family?" Naomi looked at Asher, then back at the reporter. "I regret that it took so long for the truth to come out. I regret that my father and great-grandfather had to die for it. But I don't regret fighting for justice. And I don't regret that my daughter will grow up in a world where her parents chose to do what was right." After the press conference, they drove home together. Hope was babbling in her car seat, reaching for the sunlight streaming through the windows. "You know what I realized today?" Asher said. "What?" "A year ago, I thought I was going to inherit billions of dollars. Now I'm working for a salary at a company I used to own, and I've never been happier." Naomi smiled. "That's because you finally know what real wealth is." "What's that?" She looked back at their daughter, then at the man she was learning to love. "Family, truth, justice, hope, hope," he repeated, and for the first time in his life, Asher Blackwood understood what it meant to be truly wealthy. What started as a scandal became a love story. What began as a lawsuit became a revolution. And what seemed like the end became the beginning of something beautiful. Have you ever wondered what would happen if people chose love over money? This story proves that sometimes the greatest victories come from the greatest losses. 2 years later, Naomi stood in the same Savannah hotel where everything had started. But this time, she wasn't alone. Asher held Hope, now a walking, talking 2-year-old who was fascinated by everything around her. They were here for the annual Hope Industries retreat, a tradition they'd started to celebrate the company's transformation. "Mama, look!" Hope pointed to the fountain in the hotel lobby. The same fountain Naomi had stumbled past that fateful night, wine-dizzy and heartbroken. "I see it, baby," Naomi said, smiling at the memory. So much had changed. The company retreat was different now. Instead of mandatory team-building exercises, they had workshops on worker rights and profit sharing. Instead of corporate speeches, they had testimonials from families who'd received compensation from the Justice Fund. Instead of hierarchy, they had equality. Mrs. Blackwood, a voice called out. Naomi turned. She still wasn't used to the name, even though she'd married Asher 6 months ago. The wedding had been small, simple, perfect. Her mother had cried. Asher's mother, now 2 years sober, had given a speech about redemption and second chances. Mrs. Blackwood, the voice repeated. It was Jennifer, one of the factory workers from the Atlanta plant. I wanted to thank you again. The scholarship fund you set up? My daughter just got accepted to medical school because of it. Naomi hugged her. She earned it. We just made sure money wasn't an obstacle. After Jennifer walked away, Asher squeezed her hand. You know what today is? What? 3 years ago today, you walked into the wrong hotel room. Naomi laughed. Best mistake I ever made. Same here. They walked outside to the hotel garden, where the retreat's closing ceremony was taking place. Employees from all over the country had gathered to celebrate another successful year. Production was up 40%. Worker satisfaction was at 95%, and they just announced plans to expand the employee ownership model to their suppliers. Speech time, Asher said, nodding toward the podium. Naomi took a deep breath. 3 years ago, she'd been afraid to speak up in meetings. Now, she was addressing hundreds of people who looked to her for leadership. 3 years ago, I was a different person, she began. I was scared, angry, and convinced that justice was impossible. I thought powerful people always won, and people like me always lost. She looked out at the crowd, workers, families, children playing in the grass. But I learned something important. Justice isn't about tearing down the powerful. It's about building something better. It's about choosing hope over fear, truth over lies, and love over hate. She gestured to Asher in hope. This little girl will grow up in a world where her parents chose to do what was right, even when it was hard. She'll work for companies that value people over profits. She'll live in a society where the truth matters more than money. The crowd applauded, but Naomi wasn't finished. But most importantly, she'll know that no matter how dark things seem, no matter how impossible change appears, ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose to fight for what's right. She looked directly into the camera that was recording the event for the company's social media. So to everyone watching this, remember, your voice matters. Your choices matter. And sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of courage. As the sun set over Savannah, Naomi held her daughter and watched the employees of Hope Industries dance and celebrate. 3 years ago, she'd been running from her past. Now, she was building a future, and it was beautiful. Thank you for watching Collision Course, a Georgia Scandal. If this story inspired you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that change is possible. Subscribe for more stories that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And remember, justice isn't just a dream. It's a choice we make every day. What would you have done in Naomi's situation? Let us know in the comments below.